It all started with a stupid idea during Ms. Thompson's AP chemistry class. You know how they say the best ideas come when you're not looking for them? Well, this wasn't one of those. This was more like a desperate plan hatched by a 17-year-old girl who'd spent way too much time watching rom-coms and reading Sarah Dessen novels. I, Emma Clarke, had been hopelessly in love with Nathan Parker since freshman year. 3 years of sharing classes, working on group projects, and exchanging casual "hey"s in the hallways of Roosevelt High hadn't gotten me anywhere. Nathan, with his perfectly messy brown hair and those green eyes that seemed to change color depending on what he wore, remained frustratingly oblivious to my existence beyond being that smart girl who's good at chemistry. The problem wasn't that Nathan didn't talk to me. He did. We were actually pretty good friends, in that comfortable high school way where you can share notes and make jokes about teachers, but never quite cross the line into anything more meaningful. The real issue was that Nathan had never shown any sign of seeing me as anything other than a friend. That's where Tyler Matthews came in. Tyler, Nathan's best friend since middle school, was everything Nathan wasn't: loud where Nathan was quiet, outgoing where Nathan was reserved, and flirtatious where Nathan was, well, completely clueless. They were an odd pair, but somehow it worked. The football star and the chess club president, bound together by years of inside jokes and shared history. Are you even listening? My best friend Olivia's voice snapped me back to reality. We were sitting in the school cafeteria, picking at what the lunch lady claimed was lasagna but looked more like something from a sci-fi movie. Sorry, what? Olivia rolled her eyes, pushing her curly black hair away from her face. I said, if you keep staring at Nathan like that, your eyes are going to get stuck that way. I wasn't staring, I muttered, even though we both knew I was lying. Nathan sat 2 tables away, laughing at something Tyler had just said. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the cafeteria windows caught his profile just right, and I swear my heart did that stupid flutter thing that I used to think only happened in books. You need to do something about this, Olivia declared, stabbing her fork into the suspicious lasagna. It's senior year, Em. We're not going to be in high school forever. That's when it hit me. Maybe it was the cafeteria's questionable food messing with my brain, or maybe it was just desperation, but suddenly, I had an idea. A terrible, wonderful, potentially catastrophic idea. What if, I said slowly, I pretended to have a crush on Tyler? Olivia's fork clattered onto her tray. I'm sorry, what? Think about it, I continued, warming to my ridiculous plan. Nathan and Tyler tell each other everything. If I start acting interested in Tyler, Nathan would definitely hear about it. And maybe he'd get jealous. Olivia finished, raising an eyebrow. That's the plot of like every bad teen movie ever. Exactly. I lowered my voice as a group of freshmen walked past our table. Which means it has to work sometimes, right? Otherwise, why would they keep making those movies? Olivia gave me her patented "my best friend has lost her mind" look, but I could see her starting to consider it. And how exactly do you plan to pull this off? You're about as good at flirting as a potato. She had a point. My flirting skills were definitely in the negative numbers. The last time I tried to be smooth, I told my middle school crush that his new haircut made him look like a well-groomed sheep. He'd avoided me for the rest of the year. I don't have to be good at it, I argued. I just have to be obvious enough that Tyler notices. He'll probably tell Nathan, and then. And then what? Olivia challenged. Best case scenario, Nathan gets jealous. Worst case scenario, Tyler actually likes you back, and you end up in an even bigger mess. I hadn't thought about that possibility. Tyler was nice enough, and objectively good-looking with his blonde hair and football player physique, but he wasn't Nathan. The thought of actually having to follow through if Tyler showed interest made my stomach churn more than the cafeteria lasagna. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it, I said with more confidence than I felt. Besides, Tyler flirts with everyone. He probably won't take it seriously. Olivia sighed, the way she always did when she knew she couldn't talk me out of something. Fine. But when this blows up in your face, and I reserve the right to say, I told you so, for the rest of our lives. Deal, I agreed, already planning my first move. The annual Halloween carnival was coming up this weekend, and I knew both Nathan and Tyler would be there. It seemed like the perfect opportunity to set my plan in motion. What I didn't know then was that my brilliant plan would set off a chain of events that would change everything, not just between me and Nathan, but between all of us. Sometimes the most ridiculous ideas lead to the most important moments of your life. And sometimes, the person you're trying to make jealous isn't the only one who ends up feeling that way. But sitting there in that cafeteria, watching Nathan laugh at another one of Tyler's jokes, all I could think about was taking action after 3 years of waiting. I was tired of being the girl who was good at chemistry but bad at love. It was time to change the equation. Little did I know, I was about to learn that matters of the heart don't follow any scientific formula, and sometimes the most obvious solution isn't the right one at all. The Halloween carnival at Roosevelt High was one of those traditions that seemed to get bigger and more elaborate every year. The football field had been transformed into a maze of carnival games, food stands, and Halloween decorations, complete with fake cobwebs and jack-o'-lanterns that glowed eerily in the darkening October sky. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, second-guessing my costume choice for the 100th time. After hours of debate with Olivia, I'd settled on dressing as Wednesday Addams' black dress, braided pigtails, and my best attempt at a deadpan expression. The costume was supposed to be a safe choice, something that wouldn't make it obvious I was trying too hard. But now, tugging at the collar of my dress, I wasn't so sure. "You look fine," Olivia assured me, sprawled across my bed in her Wonder Woman costume. "Stop fidgeting. What if this is a terrible idea?" I asked, voicing the doubt that had been gnawing at me all day. "What if?" "Emma Clarke," Olivia cut me off, sitting up straight. "We've been over this. The plan is simple: go to the carnival, hang around Tyler enough to be noticed but not enough to be obvious, and let nature take its course. And if it doesn't work, at least we'll have funnel cake." She made it sound so easy. But as we pulled into the school parking lot, I felt like my heart was trying to escape through my throat. The carnival was already in full swing, music and laughter drifting across the field. And there, by the ring toss booth, was Tyler, dressed as a Viking, complete with a plastic helmet and hammer. Nathan stood next to him, and my breath caught when I saw his costume. He was dressed as Dr. Strange, the cape flowing behind him in the autumn breeze, his usually messy hair styled perfectly to match the character. Of course he'd choose something from the Marvel Universe. He'd been a comic book nerd since middle school. "Remember," Olivia whispered as we approached, casual but interested. I nodded, trying to channel my inner Wednesday Addams's confidence. Tyler spotted us first, his face breaking into a wide grin. "Ladies. Looking good." He struck a dramatic pose with his plastic hammer. "Care to try your luck at winning a prize for a mighty Viking warrior?" I laughed, making sure it was just a little louder than necessary. "Depends on the prize," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Nathan's head turn slightly in our direction. "For you, Wednesday." Tyler pretended to think about it. "How about this?" He reached behind the booth and pulled out a small plastic skull with light-up eyes. "Seems appropriate." "Perfect," I said, stepping closer to the booth. "Though I don't know if I'm any good at ring toss." "I could show you," Tyler offered, and I swear I heard Nathan make a small noise behind us. "It's all in the wrist." What happened next wasn't part of the plan. As Tyler came around the booth to demonstrate, he tripped over his own cape, stumbling forward. I reached out instinctively to steady him, and somehow we ended up much closer than I'd intended, his hands on my waist, mine on his shoulders, faces inches apart. Time seemed to freeze for a moment. Tyler's eyes, this close up, were a surprisingly deep shade of blue. I could feel the warmth of his hands through my dress, smell the hint of cologne he was wearing. For a split second, I forgot this was supposed to be pretend. Then I heard the sound of something hitting the ground hard. We both turned to see Nathan's Doctor Strange cape trailing behind him as he stormed away from the booth. "Nate?" Tyler called after him, letting go of me. "Hey, man, where are you going?" But Nathan didn't turn around. He disappeared into the crowd, leaving behind a fallen plastic cup that had spilled hot chocolate across the ground. "What's his problem?" Tyler muttered, looking genuinely confused. "He's been weird all week." I stood there, my heart racing, trying to process what had just happened. This was what I wanted, right? Nathan's reaction certainly seemed like jealousy. But instead of feeling triumphant, I felt awful. "I should go check on him," Tyler said, already stepping away. But Olivia, who had been watching the whole scene unfold, spoke up. "Actually," she said, with a meaningful look at me, "I think Emma should go." Tyler looked between us, and for a moment, I saw something flash across his face: understanding. Amusement. But it was gone before I could be sure. "Yeah," he said slowly. "Yeah, maybe you should, Em." I hesitated for just a second before nodding. As I turned to follow Nathan's path through the carnival, Tyler called after me. "Hey, Emma." I looked back. He was smiling, but it wasn't his usual easy grin. "Just, be careful with him, okay?" Something about the way he said it made me wonder if he knew more than he was letting on. But I didn't have time to analyze it because right then, through a gap in the crowd, I spotted Nathan's cape disappearing around the corner of the school building. I took off after him, my Wednesday Addams shoes definitely not made for running. The carnival lights and noise faded as I rounded the corner, finding myself in the quiet darkness of the school's side yard. Nathan stood with his back to me, his cape moving gently in the wind. "Nathan?" My voice sounded small in the darkness. He turned, and even in the dim light from the distant carnival, I could see that his face was a storm of emotions. "What are you doing here, Emma?" The way he said my name sharp, almost angry, made me flinch. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. In all my planning, I hadn't prepared for what to do if I actually succeeded in making him jealous. I hadn't prepared for the hurt I could hear in his voice. I started, but he cut me off. "If you like Tyler, that's fine. You don't need my permission." But, he ran a hand through his hair, messing up his perfect Doctor Strange styling. "But did it have to be Tyler?" There was something in his voice I'd never heard before, something raw and real that made my carefully constructed plan crumble to dust. Standing there in the dark, watching him struggle with words, Nathan, who always knew exactly what to say, I realized I had made a terrible mistake. But before I could speak, before I could even begin to explain or apologize, a voice called out from the direction of the carnival. "Nathan? Emma? Are you guys out here?" It was Tyler. Of course it was Tyler. Because nothing about this night was going according to plan. Nathan's eyes met mine in the darkness, and for a moment, I saw everything I'd been hoping to see for 3 years: hurt, yes, but also something else, something that looked a lot like longing. Then he straightened his shoulders, adjusted his cape, and walked past me toward Tyler's voice. "Everything's fine," he called out, his voice steady. "Just needed some air." I stood there, alone in the dark, my Wednesday Addams costume suddenly feeling ridiculous. I'd wanted to make Nathan jealous, and I'd succeeded. So why did it feel like I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life? As I walked slowly back toward the carnival lights, I could hear Tyler and Nathan talking in low voices. I caught fragments of their conversation: "didn't mean to," and "should have told you," and something that sounded like, "not what you think." One thing was becoming increasingly clear: this plan was spiraling out of control, and I had no idea how to stop it. The worst part? A tiny voice in the back of my mind kept replaying that moment with Tyler, the warmth of his hands, the blue of his eyes, the genuine concern in his voice when he told me to be careful with Nathan. What had I gotten myself into? The Monday after the Halloween carnival felt like walking into a minefield. I spent 20 minutes that morning trying to decide whether to take my usual seat next to Nathan in AP chemistry or hide in the back row. In the end, my feet carried me to our shared lab table out of pure habit. Nathan was already there, bent over his notebook, his pen moving across the page with unusual intensity. He didn't look up when I sat down, but I saw his shoulders tense slightly. "Hey," I said softly, trying to sound normal. Like I hadn't spent the entire weekend replaying that moment in the dark, his voice asking, "Did it have to be Tyler?" He glanced up briefly, his green eyes meeting mine for a fraction of a second before returning to his notebook. "Hey." That single word carried more weight than any conversation we'd ever had. The silence that followed was deafening, filled with all the things we weren't saying. Ms. Thompson started her lecture about molecular bonds, but for the first time in my life, I couldn't focus on chemistry. Instead, I found myself stealing glances at Nathan's profile, noticing things I'd somehow missed in 3 years of sitting next to him. The slight furrow between his eyebrows when he concentrated. The way his hair fell across his forehead, still slightly messy despite his obvious attempts to tame it. The tightness around his mouth that hadn't been there before Saturday night. Halfway through the class, a note landed on my side of the table. My heart jumped, thinking it was from Nathan, but the handwriting wasn't his. It was from Lily Chen, who sat behind us. "Tyler's looking for you. Says it's important." I felt Nathan go completely still beside me. Without looking, I knew he'd seen the note. The pen in his hand stopped moving, and I could practically feel the waves of tension rolling off him. After class, I found Tyler waiting by my locker. He was wearing his Letterman jacket, hands shoved deep in his pockets, looking uncharacteristically serious. "Hey," he said as I approached. "Can we talk?" I nodded, my stomach doing nervous flips. We ended up in the empty music room, sitting on plastic chairs meant for the school orchestra. Through the window, I could see students crossing the courtyard, their lives continuing normally while mine felt like it was imploding. "So," Tyler started, then stopped, running a hand through his blonde hair. "I think we need to clear some things up." "Tyler, Let me finish," he said gently. "I know what you're doing, Emma." My heart stopped. "What?" He gave me a knowing look. "You're not exactly subtle." The laughing at my jokes, the hanging around my locker, the whole ring toss thing at the carnival. "You're trying to make Nathan jealous." I felt my face burn. How did you?" "Because I've been watching him pine over you for the past year and a half," Tyler said, and my world tilted on its axis. "And because he's my best friend, and he finally told me how he felt about you last summer." I sat there, trying to process this information. Nathan had feelings for me. Had felt something for a year and a half. While I was planning elaborate schemes to get his attention, he had already. "But," I stammered, "but he never said anything. He never showed any sign." Tyler laughed, but it wasn't unkind. "Emma, the guy joined the chemistry club sophomore year just to spend more time with you. He hates chemistry. He's been carrying around that copy of Pride and Prejudice for weeks because you mentioned it was your favorite book." My mind raced back through countless interactions, seeing them in a new light. The way Nathan always seemed to have an extra pencil when I forgot mine. How he'd mysteriously started showing up at the same coffee shop where I studied on weekends. The careful way he'd help me with physics problems, even though I knew he struggled with physics himself. "Oh my God," I whispered. "I'm an idiot." "You're not an idiot," Tyler said, smiling. "You're just both really bad at this." "But why didn't he ever say anything?" Tyler's smile faded slightly. "Because every time he worked up the courage, something would happen to convince him you weren't interested." Like when you turned down his invitation to the movies last spring. That wasn't I had a family thing. I didn't know it was supposed to be. I thought he was just being friendly. Yeah, well, he spent 3 weeks convinced you were letting him down easy. Tyler shook his head. And now he thinks you're interested in me, and he's trying to be a good friend by stepping back, even though it's killing him. I buried my face in my hands. This is such a mess. I've ruined everything. Not everything, Tyler said. But you need to fix it. And Emma? I looked up at him. No more games, okay? Just talk to him. As if on cue, we heard a sharp intake of breath from the doorway. We both turned to see Nathan standing there, sheet music clutched in his hand, looking between us with an expression that made my heart ache. Sorry, he said stiffly. Didn't mean to interrupt. Before either of us could speak, he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing down the empty hallway. Nathan, wait. I called after him, but he was already gone. Tyler stood up. Well, that could have gone better. He's going to think. Yep. And now he probably thinks we were. Probably. I slumped back in my chair. What am I going to do? Tyler gave me a long look. You know, for two of the smartest people I know, you and Nathan are really dense sometimes. Go after him. But what if? Emma, Tyler cut me off, trust me on this. Go. After him. I hesitated for just a moment longer, then jumped up and ran for the door. As I left, I heard Tyler call after me, and Emma? Next time you want to make someone jealous, maybe don't pick their best friend. I ran through the halls, ignoring the strange looks from other students. Nathan had been heading toward the library. Of course he had, it was his favorite hiding spot when he was upset. But as I rounded the corner, I crashed straight into someone. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I started to say, then froze. It wasn't Nathan I'd run into. It was Olivia. And from the look on her face, she had something important to tell me. She said, grabbing my arm. There's something you need to know. About Nathan. About everything. I stood there, breathing hard from running, as Olivia's words washed over me. And suddenly, I realized that making Nathan jealous wasn't even close to being the most complicated part of this situation. Nathan's moving to California. Olivia's words hit me like a physical blow. We were sitting on the floor in the empty art classroom, the afternoon sun casting long shadows through the windows. Around us, half-finished paintings on easels looked down like silent witnesses to my world falling apart. What? I managed to whisper. When? End of the semester, Olivia said softly. His dad got some big job offer in Silicon Valley. I overheard him telling the guidance counselor this morning. He was asking about early graduation options. End of the semester. That was just 6 weeks away. My mind raced through all the time I'd wasted, 3 years of silent pining, weeks of this stupid jealousy plan, and now. But that's not all, Olivia continued, biting her lip. There's something else you need to know. About Tyler. I looked up at her, wondering how this could possibly get more complicated. Remember last summer, when I went to that writing camp? She asked, fidgeting with the sleeve of her sweater. Tyler was there too. Tyler? At writing camp? That didn't make sense. Tyler was the football star, the life of every party. What was he doing at writing camp? He's been writing poetry since freshman year, Olivia said, a slight blush creeping into her cheeks. Really good poetry, actually. We got close over the summer. Really close. The pieces started falling into place. The way Olivia had been checking her phone more often lately. The mysterious smile she'd get sometimes during lunch. The fact that she'd been surprisingly willing to go along with my jealousy plan, despite her initial protests. Oh my God, I breathed. You and Tyler. She nodded. Nothing happened, not really. We just talked. A lot. About everything. About you and Nathan, actually. Tyler could see how much Nathan liked you, and I knew how you felt about him, and we wanted to help somehow. So when I came up with this plan, I thought maybe it would finally force you both to be honest with each other, she admitted. Tyler agreed. We didn't expect it to get so messy. I stared at her, processing this new information. Does Nathan know about you and Tyler? No one knows, she said quietly. We didn't want to make things weird. And then you started pretending to like Tyler, and I didn't know what to do. The irony of the situation hit me like a wave. Here I was, pretending to like Tyler to make Nathan jealous, while my best friend was actually falling for Tyler, who was helping his best friend Nathan with his feelings for me. It was like something out of a Shakespeare play, but with less fancy dialogue and more high school awkwardness. I'm so sorry, Liv, I said, reaching for her hand. I had no idea. She squeezed my hand. It's okay. But you need to talk to Nathan. Today. Before he convinces himself that leaving early is the best option. What do I even say? Sorry, I pretended to like your best friend to make you jealous. By the way, please don't move to California. How about the truth? A voice said from the doorway. We both jumped. Tyler stood there, leaning against the doorframe, his Letterman jacket slung over one shoulder. The look he gave Olivia was soft, gentle in a way I'd never seen before. The truth, he continued, stepping into the room, about everything. Olivia stood up quickly, brushing off her jeans. Tyler, I got your poems, he said quietly. The ones you left in my locker. I knew they were from you. I'd know your writing anywhere. The air in the room felt electric. I looked between them, seeing 3 years of friendship and rivalry and secrets shifting into something new. Nathan's in the library, Tyler said, turning to me. He's probably pretending to read that copy of Pride and Prejudice again. Go talk to him. No more games, no more plans. Just talk. I got to my feet, but hesitated. What about you two? Tyler looked at Olivia, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. We've got some things to figure out too. As I left the art room, I heard Olivia say softly, You really kept my poems. Every single one, Tyler replied. I walked toward the library, my heart pounding. The hallways were almost empty now, the afternoon light turning everything golden. Through the library windows, I could see Nathan sitting at our usual table, a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice open in front of him. Here was the boy who'd joined the chemistry club for me, who'd carried around my favorite book, who'd been just as afraid of ruining our friendship as I had been. And in 6 weeks, he might be gone. I took a deep breath and pushed open the library door. It was time for the truth, all of it. As I approached his table, Nathan looked up. The sunlight caught his eyes, turning them that impossible shade of green that had first made my heart skip a beat freshman year. He started to get up, probably planning to avoid another awkward encounter, but I put my hand on his arm. Please, I said. We need to talk. He hesitated for a moment, then slowly sat back down. I slid into the chair across from him, noticing that the copy of Pride and Prejudice was open to my favorite scene, the first proposal. I know about California, I said softly. Nathan's hand tightened on the book. For a long moment, he didn't speak. The library was quiet around us, the late afternoon sun painting everything in shades of gold and amber. It felt like we were in our own little world, suspended in time. How did you find out? He finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. That's not important, I said. What's important is that we need to talk. Really talk. About everything. He looked up at me then, his green eyes searching my face. Everything. I took a deep breath. I never liked Tyler, I blurted out. I mean, I like him as a friend, but I was just pretending to be interested in him to make you jealous, which was absolutely stupid and immature and probably ruined everything, but I've been in love with you since freshman year and I didn't know how to tell you and... Emma, Nathan interrupted, and I realized I'd been rambling. You've been in love with me since freshman year? I nodded, feeling my face burn. Since that day in biology when you helped me name my dissection frog Fitzgerald because I said he looked literary. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. That's actually when I started falling for you too. My heart stopped. What? The way you looked so serious about giving that frog a proper name, he said, his smile growing. How you wrote him a tiny obituary when we were done. I'd never met anyone like you. But you never said anything. Neither did you, he countered. And then last spring, when I asked you to the movies. I had no idea that was supposed to be a date, I groaned. I had this stupid family dinner I couldn't get out of, but if I'd known. If you'd known. I would have cancelled, I admitted. I would have cancelled everything. Nathan was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing the edges of the book. And Tyler? Was never anything but your best friend, I said firmly. Who, by the way, has been secretly writing poetry and falling in love with my best friend all summer. Nathan's eyes widened. Tyler and Olivia? I nodded. Apparently they bonded over watching us be idiots about our feelings. He laughed then, a real laugh that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. We have been pretty stupid, haven't we? The stupidest, I agreed, feeling something warm and hopeful unfurling in my chest. But Nathan, what about California? His smile faded slightly. My dad's company is opening a new office there. He wants us to move at the end of the semester. And you're thinking about graduating early? I was, he admitted. This morning, when I thought you and Tyler. I thought maybe it would be easier to just leave. And now? He reached across the table and took my hand. His palm was warm against mine, sending tingles up my arm. Now I'm thinking that Stanford has a really good computer science program, but it's only a couple hours from Berkeley. And I hear they have an excellent chemistry department. My heart leaped. You looked up colleges near Berkeley? I might have done some research, he said, looking slightly embarrassed. After you mentioned it was your dream school last year. Just, hypothetically. Hypothetically, I repeated, squeezing his hand. And hypothetically, would you want to get coffee with me this weekend? Like, on an actual date that we both know is a date? I don't know, he teased. Are you sure you wouldn't rather go with Tyler? I rolled my eyes. I think Tyler's going to be busy. Last I saw, he was in the art room with Olivia, discussing poetry. Tyler writes poetry. Nathan shook his head, grinning. How did I not know that? Apparently we've all been keeping secrets, I said. Maybe it's time to stop. He nodded, then stood up, still holding my hand. Come on. Where are we going? To return this book, he said, picking up Pride and Prejudice. I think I finally understand why Elizabeth and Darcy took so long to figure things out. Sometimes the person you love is right in front of you, but you're too scared of ruining what you have to take a chance. As we walked to the checkout desk, hand in hand, I caught sight of our reflection in the library window. We looked different, somehow lighter, happier, like we'd finally stepped into the roles we were meant to play all along. Hey, Emma. Nathan said as we pushed through the library doors into the warm afternoon light. Yeah. Next time you want to get my attention, maybe just tell me. No more fake crushes on my best friend? I laughed, leaning into his shoulder. Deal. No more games. Good, he said softly, and then he was kissing me, right there in the hallway, with the late afternoon sun streaming through the windows and 3 years of waiting melting away like snow in spring. Later that evening, I got a text from Olivia, Tyler's poetry is actually really good. Who knew football players could be so deep? P.S. You and Nathan are disgustingly cute together. I smiled, looking at the new contact in my phone, Nathan, and the message he'd just sent, already looking up coffee shops halfway between Stanford and Berkeley. You know, hypothetically. Sometimes the most complicated plans lead to the simplest truths. And sometimes, when you stop playing games and start being honest, you find that love was there all along, just waiting for you to notice. As for Tyler and Olivia, well, that's another story entirely. But I hear it involves a lot of poetry, some football games, and two people who found each other while helping their best friends fall in love. Turns out, even the most ridiculous plans can lead to something real, if you're brave enough to tell the truth in the end.